well, sharpen your pencils, set up those dice, and free your mind, because we're about to build an open world. Hello, my name is Knox Adams. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the cruise director for OpenWorld, and I just want to let you know that I love you. Here on Build an Open World, we create diverse characters, accessible places, and supportive things that you can use as inspiration or even take directly and use in your own fantasy RPG worlds at home. Today, our guest is Joanna. Joanna, please introduce yourself. Tell us your pronouns, and what is your experience with tabletop RPGs?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Joanna, Joanna Liu, and I am I do a few different things, so it's going to be a little bit harder to introduce myself fully. But I organize an Instagram account called D&D Research, which is basically founded based on my thesis research on learning about how people collectively play the D&D game and also using creative tools. And we also expanded the research. Now it's a team of people. I also do D&D related jewelry on Instagram. I also, another thing I do is building an augmented reality application for D&D. So as you can see, all my life involves around D&D. Myself, I'm being a player of D&D for about 7 years, and then being a DM for about almost as long, probably just a couple months shy of 7 years, because I became the forever DM for my friends group very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds amazing that your whole life is so ingrained with D&D. I feel like that is where I want to be someday as well. Right now, this is where just the podcast, but someday I hope to have even more like you are doing with yours.
Yeah, it's very easy to do. Once you have one D&D kind of avenue open, all the other things just happen naturally.
Just, yeah, rolls in everything with it. Yeah, that's amazing. So I was wondering, what is a defining quality, a characteristic, or identity that you feel is lacking in the characters that inhabit the fictional worlds that you are in as both a creator or a player?
I think there's a lot more people doing explore different genders now. One thing I always do when I play D&D is I usually always play a gender of like the opposite gender, or someone that's not same as me, so that I can experience different experiences. Another thing is I do feel just the D&D community in general, because the Asian population is not very, very represented. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the characters, a lot of them based on the Western kind of fairy tales and stories. Mm-hmm. So I found it be interesting to bring in some of the different cultural background into the players that I played.
I love that. I think that's amazing, and I can't wait to see what we build together. Yeah, so together we are going to create a character and backstory in hopefully the next 20 or so minutes that incorporates those characteristics that Joanna just spoke about. Before we get into the build, please remember to take a minute to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and follow us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts to be kept up to date on the latest additions to this open world. Just a disclaimer before we get started. During our discussion, there is a good chance that we might discuss topics that we are not experts on and identities that we might not identify with. We are coming from a place of openness and respect, but if we don't get something quite right, please reach out to us on social media, and I will personally add an amendment to the post on my website about this episode. We are open to learning and growing here. So now we're going to get started on building the character. First, I want to see if we're going to build a hero or if we're going to build an NPC. So can you roll a d6 for me?
Okay. That's a 3.
A 3? Okay, so we're going to build a hero. So we're going to do a standard hero. Well, I mean, it might not be standard. There's no standardness here. Now we're going to move into ancestry. So if you could roll a D100.
That's a 93.
We are going to use orc. D12 for a background.
8.
All right, hermit. Last one is a D20 for class.
Another 8.
Another 8, paladin.
All right, cool.
I found that a lot of people like to start with age just to get a concept of where this person is in their life. And this doesn't necessarily mean a specific number age, but more are we thinking a child, young adult, middle age, senior? What do you feel like this orc paladin? How do you see this orc paladin?
Let's go with young adult.
So next we can move into body size. So this one, just to help us kind of get a visual of what we're looking for, this isn't the technical small, medium, large like the D&D mechanic size, but this is more thinking about their height in comparison to other orcs, and also maybe the shape of their body if it differs, the muscle content, the fat content, just to all give it a very deliberate, how do we see this character?
Yeah, I think when you think of an orc, the stereotype is always very buff, right? So why don't we go with the opposite? Someone who is not buff for orc.
Are you thinking more if not buff, are you thinking more in the side of like lean and lanky, or more in the side of larger with less muscle?
Definitely lean and lanky. I think that would be an interesting one. Yeah.
Next, so we have sex and gender identity here. As we know, these can differ from each other. I recently did an episode where the gender identity was one of the main themes of that episode, and they were non-binary. And my guest that I spoke with, she was saying that sometimes, unless, like, if they differ from each other, unless the sex is going to be a deliberate part of the storyline of this character, then it doesn't always need to, like, we don't need to define that. But again, that's just that I like to describe some of this. I might cut out, the discussion between these things.
Oh yeah, this is fantastic. Yeah, I love this kind of discussion. So yeah, so I definitely agree. I think it's kind of like who you identify with is probably the most important part, right, for this person. So for me, I think I haven't tried this in my characters before. Is playing someone who is more gender fluid, can be identified either way, and then I'm okay with it. So that's kind of a character I would like to play with.
Yeah, I like that you specified gender fluid, because we've had a non-binary character made, but I feel like even though they have similar aspects to them, they definitely are different. And I like the idea that they could, like, they flow back and forth like the fluid motion. They could go either way. I like that. So then, do we think that the sex assigned at birth is important to this character's story, or no?
I would say not really. So let's leave it blank.
All right. We'll leave that one. And then when we're thinking about how they express themselves, I know they identify as gender fluid. Do you see them actually expressing both the male, masculine, and feminine energy back and forth?
Definitely.
Sexual orientation, since we are working with these, how do you see this character identifying their sexual orientation?
I think bisexual.
At this point, do you think we have enough to try and give this character a name so we can start referring to them?
Yeah, actually, I don't have my list of orc names here.
No worries.
I don't know
I can pull up a generator if you want and kind of give a few examples. And
if you can give me a few starter points.
Yeah, for sure.
I can go from there. Yeah.
And this is something that has been really fun with the last couple, is that when somebody hears a name that just clicks, they're like, that has to be it. That's my character's name. Dole, Ruvrun, Dotie, Agim, Mil,
I think Mil probably.
Mil. I like that. It's simple. I feel like it's also something when I'm playing games. Even if I give my characters like a really long full name, I usually like to give them a one syllable nickname that is just an
Hmm.
easier to like yell out when you're talking with your
Yeah.
party members. With these four, which are race, culture, religion, and language, these
Hmm.
four I like to not think about in because every game is going to be different with what their religions have available to them and the specific languages and all of these things. So these are more what are we pulling from the real world to influence? So like you were
Hmm.
saying, you want to pull from Eastern Asian culture.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think Asian culture or kind of the tribal culture is another one I'm thinking of. That someone I think I'm thinking this character come from some place that it's very they have a traditional way of living that's
Okay.
very very strict. So that's kind of the culture I'm envisioning.
And are we still thinking for an Asian, right? Like
Yeah,
Asian
I mean
culture?
it's yeah, definitely, but it's not necessarily. I'm thinking of drawing the kind of elements from the Asian culture, like for example, that idea of traditional like strictness and also the distancing like of like because if you think of I think of my parents like
Yeah.
this is sad but like my parents never really once seriously said I'm proud of you or I love you, but that's just because of the Asian culture, kind of how it is. It's very difficult for them to say that because their parents never said that to them.
Right.
So those kind of elements I kind of wanted to like implement it in this kind of like environment so that it's just like tiny bit of a hint of like okay this is how my culture usually communicate and this is kind of how I want that character to have a hint of me kind of thing.
Right. I like that. And I almost, now I'm going back to this hermit background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost wondering if it's not an actual hermit, but it almost like they grew up feeling like a hermit
Mm, yeah.
because they didn't, like you were saying, that's like that strictness and the example that you gave, where it's like it
Mhm.
was like almost like an emotional hermit.
Mhm.
I wonder if
Yeah,
that is something we can
that
kind
makes
of
sense. Yeah.
race and skin color. I mean, for skin color, orcs I feel like can be there's a multitude, and
Mhm.
especially because it's a fantasy world, they
Mhm.
could be any color we want them to be.
Mhm. I don't know what are the normal colors. I think there is a guide of like what works normal color are, but my favorite color is purple. So I'm going to
Yeah,
put down to be a like a lilac pale purple-ish color. Like exactly like we kind of what you have on this like spreadsheet that this sheet we're filling out. This kind
yeah.
of purple. Yeah.
This traditional tribal society that he grew up in. That's what like this tribe. I don't know if are they all that kind of lilac pale purple color.
Yeah, yeah, that makes them all the same color, so that he hasn't seen anyone different color than or he or her like than
Hmm.
this person
Yeah.
that they are. So it's like very confusing. Yeah,
Yeah, and we can
when
use
this
he
person
or
goes
we
out.
can use he him or her she
Yeah,
her pronouns
yeah,
because they're gender fluid. So whatever
yeah,
comes out, there's no wrong answer here.
yeah.
Um, I really like that, and I again because it's a fantasy world, we can make it whatever we want, which is so great. Because Mil is a paladin,
Hmm.
religion will play a part into it
Hmm.
in some way.
Hmm.
I wonder if there's any religion in real life that we think the kind of relationship that they have with their god is
Mm.
similar to, or that we would pull
Hmm.
elements from.
I'm an atheist myself personally, but I like to dabble in reading different religions.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of that kind of person, just very curious. And I like the concept. Even as a kid growing up, I always liked the concept of kind of the Buddhism where and the Zen kind of like which is another different type of, I guess, uh, that kind of religion that like focus on the peace of the mind and also focusing on kind of the nature and the goodness, right? And also a little bit of Taoism, which is at the same time about the balancing the yin yang kind of balance of the world. So that's kind of something I'm interested, is that kind of like connection with nature and a connection with the balancing of the world.
I loved everything you said. I think that's really cool. And one of the paladin subclasses that come is called Oath of the Ancients, and I think that would fit with that kind of relationship that you spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
And again, for language, they would this Mil would likely speak Orc and likely speak a few other languages of where they
Mm-hmm.
live in whatever world they come from. But
Mm-hmm.
in this one, it's kind of like, is there an accent that this character would have, or is there a way that they would talk that might be different? Is it like is it a cadence to their voice? Like is it slow? Is it fast?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think probably I would say slow, because he's always trying to think, am I making the right, am I saying the right sign?
Okay.
Because he's is so different, right? The way he or she acts is very different. So that I think the slowness probably come from just self-doubting, like, am I saying the right thing right now? It is kind of what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, yeah, so it's like self-doubt and almost overthinking everything
Mm-hmm.
to make
Everything,
sure
yeah.
that what they're saying
Mm-hmm.
is appropriate and is the right thing to do because they don't want to make more waves. Physical disability. What are we thinking? Do you think that this character has a physical disability?
This person doesn't have any physical disability,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely, like on other side of things, like I see you have all different kinds of
Yeah,
disability
so
there. So
no, yeah,
we'll
so we can
definitely
go no
get there.
physical disabilities.
Hmm.
Are you thinking cognitive disability, neurodiversity?
Yeah, I would say like the part of being very slow and always kind of self-doubting and overthinking make a lot of people believe that maybe he is just very slow, and that's one way to it, but also it's like really hinders his decision making process. Basically, the indecisiveness is kind of like the disorder of, like, when you go into a supermarket, you like
Mhm.
spend hours in there trying to pick one can of like food, like which is the
Right.
right one. So that kind of I don't know what it's called actually. I have like, but I think there is a disorder associated with that.
I'm wondering if it might be. I'm wondering if that might actually be some kind of anxiety disorder,
Hmm.
and that might actually fall under mental health condition, because if he has like a stress, like like either panic or stress, like anxiety, I think Mill might have some anxiety, and
Hmm.
that's what's causing the indecisiveness,
Hmm.
or possibly even OCD, where
Hmm.
it's uh, it needs to be right 100%
Hmm.
before they can move forward.
Hmm.
I think, again, if there is a cognitive disability that is what me and Joanna are talking about, please let us know. But that is in my head what I believe would be what you're talking about.
Sure, let's put it down. I'm like, again, I'm not the expert in any
Yeah,
of
no,
this.
and
So so
that's why
it's,
it's a discussion
yeah.
between multiple
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
exactly. I think it's good to start a discussion for sure. Yeah. In terms of illness, I've been thinking actually. So a little bit about me, going a little bit about personal background.
Mm,
But I have a genetic skin disorder.
okay.
And then when that's more exhibit when I was a younger kid. So my skin basically very dry and then appear to be like skill like even. So when I was younger, I has been excluded in a lot of activity when kids hold hands or do things together because they felt like, oh, it's contagious or something.
Okay.
But obviously it's not. It's genetic skin disorder, so it's
Hmm.
not contagious. But because of lack of knowledge, I was rejected from three different kindergartens until one actually admitted me.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, yeah, but this is also back in China where I was born, and then like it's more like this is where I'm talking about kind of the conservativeness. And I remember as a very young as a kid, I was playing on a playground, and then we were holding hands doing activities. Suddenly, one kid whispered something to another kid's ear, and then rumors spread, and then they all suddenly just like stopped holding hands with me and said, "Oh, you're out of the circle. You are contagious and we don't want you to be in this game." Obviously it takes a lot of like time for me to get over that kind of different traumas that has caused me, and
Hmm.
I was always actually alone. But I do feel in some way like definitely physical disability has a huge impact on mental disabilities, right?
Hmm.
Mental state, mental health,
Hmm.
and that kind of relates together for sure. And I don't know how far I never imposed this kind of illness or different things in any of my characters before because I always wanted to be a healthy, like outgoing kind of bard kind of type of person because that's kind of where I perceive myself. But because of my past experience, I've been always sheltered. I kind of closed in. I was not talking to anybody, and then for a period of time, even I believed that like just I would never talk again. So I think when we talk about illness, I think it has to connect with like the huge impact of that illness on mental health,
Hmm.
for sure. So I'd like to actually put something similar for this character because I have never done that before. I feel
Yeah.
since we're having this conversation of diversity and different experiences.
Yeah. So if we is there a name to the the skin condition that you want to give this character?
Yeah, I need to search for
That's no,
it. Let
totally
me.
okay. That is totally
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I just
Uh,
because
I.
one of the things that I want to do is like illnesses that are
Mhm,
like you were saying that they're just part of who you are. It's not like it's not contagious. It's
mhm,
just it's part of who you are. I don't want D&D to kind of push those people who identify with that away
mhm,
because it's like if
mhm,
somebody had asthma, you
mhm,
wouldn't push them away and be like, "Oh, well you can't play D&D with us because you have asthma."
mhm.
So we want to be able to show that people that yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'll type it to you in the chat because I don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay.
My English is still. I'm trying to like. I don't know how to pronounce that. Medical terms are the hardest for me to
They
pronounce.
are so yeah, I don't know. Ichthyosis.
Yeah, or yeah,
ICHTHYOSIS.
yeah. So
Um,
that's my skin condition, and I feel yeah, it would be interesting to finally have that identified in a character I play. So it's mostly genetic. There are cases that are not, but the genetic cases are more
mhm.
common. And then I think in my case, is both of my parents had hidden genes, so they do not exhibit any of the symptoms. But
Okay.
part of a genes, they have that hidden gene, and it's kind of like it's a very rare case. It's a I think like very rare disease. Yeah.
I wonder if maybe Mill's like grandparent or great grandparent also in this tribal
Mhm.
culture with them like had it too, and so like they or something like that where they knew some or they heard stories of somebody else who had it, but maybe they never met them.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of some way that Unless also having that and feeling alone is a major part of it. So maybe that is an important part, that they are the
Yeah,
only person that they know.
yeah. I think it's also because for both of my parents, they're non-exhibit. So
Hmm.
basically, they don't show symptoms, right? They are normal, but then they have a kid that are not normal. Then it's it's kind of huge, like like what like and then when especially in this tribal, if we're talking about this tribal environment when they don't really have necessarily the tools like we do right now, the DNA
Right.
analysis and all those, like then they would not know what went wrong, right? They
Right.
would not they would not understand it. They would just think there's something wrong with the kid.
Hmm.
And then you think in some places they may even like dispose the kid, right, for other like even smaller villages, let's say, because the kid is so different than what they are.
I feel like that makes some of these other things make a bit more sense. Like all of like these things that we were talking about before we even got to this part, like their
Mhm.
slow kind of self-doubt, because they're like I've already like I'm like this, and my parents were kind of cold towards me, and I don't know, I
Mhm.
feel like it's all coming together in a
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like I said, it's kind of scary. It's like I never reflect on a character this way.
yeah.
And then like I never put this much of myself into a character in this way as well. So this is very new to me because I'm always, I guess, I sometimes also of course use D&D as a escapism, and I
Hmm.
try to escape from the reality of this kind of harsh reality I have experienced. So I'm trying to always keep the memory happy, but sometimes I think it's definitely important to reflect on what you have experienced and how that affects, because there's a lot of other people experiencing the same thing, but
Right.
they're not there yet to enjoy themselves.
Right. Well, I mean, thank you for bringing this much of yourself into this character. I think it's making this character a really cool character. Um, so these last six slots are more on their experiences. So family status, we know that they have parents,
Mhm.
and they're a young adult, so they probably are maybe just moving
Mhm.
out of their parents' home, or
Mhm.
have just left their parents' home. So they probably, um, yeah. So like families, they have parents, but they're probably not. Do you think they're still? Do you think if they're a hero, they're probably going out on their first adventure or something like that?
Yeah, I definitely feel like they feel like it's time to leave, to expand the horizon a little bit, and then just also that to have a relief of basically probably from this tribal environment, right?
Hmm.
Just wanted to feel what's out there.
Yeah. And I definitely think upbringing, we've discussed that tribal traditions,
Mhm.
traditional society, relationship style or marital status. It sounds like this person is probably single right now.
Bingo. Yep.
Um, do you think they would define their relationship style in a certain way? Things like monogamous, polyamorous, something else, or if not, because they're single, they haven't had that experience, they might not know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this person probably doesn't know, and then he or she had crushes. They had crushes on people, different people, at the, like because bisexual.
Hmm.
It either could be a man or woman, but it's really just because this person's background. Um, it's like they feel close to a particular individual who are nice to them, and then
Right.
that's rare. And then when that happens, they immediately grow this kind of fondness and then have a crush on them, and it didn't matter what gender they are, who they are, or what their background is. It's mostly that kind of like little tiny waves of crushes, but never able to do anything or act on it. So
Yeah,
I
and
think that
probably yeah,
that's kind of the
yeah. They probably need time to figure out what those crushes actually mean to them, and if it's just friendship that they're mistaking for something else. Socioeconomic status. This is Like, how did they, if they're just starting out their adventuring career, they themselves are probably not that well off.
Hmm.
But in
Yeah.
this traditional society that they grew up in, do you think they grew up kind of like at the higher level, like higher tier, like
Mm.
upper class? Do you think their parents were well off, or do you think that this whole society itself maybe didn't actually, um, maybe the society didn't put as much stress on money, that because of this religious nature relationship with nature?
Hmm. I think that's probably exactly what I'm thinking is this tribal culture doesn't really put that much emphasis on money. So the people don't own a lot, but they're told to be happy about what they have,
Mm,
kind of like, and then so this character, obviously male, never really thought about money in that way. So probably that's kind of.
okay, life experience. This is obviously we've talked a lot about what their different life experience is, but this is, I'm thinking, is there like a moment or two moments in their life, like that, a turning point? When was the shift that? Because I know you said a lot of this, like if this kind of emotional hermit background that they've been experiencing,
Mhm,
um, what was the shift that they were like, you know what, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna be an adventurer, I'm gonna kind of. I feel like there was a moment where they had to make that choice to be like, I'm gonna make
mhm,
myself happy, kind of thing. I'm not gonna let
mhm,
my past define how I feel about myself.
mhm, mhm. I think with the paladin background, it has to be something with a religion, right? It was
Right.
like it has to be like pivotal point in their life where they suddenly feel like, hey, I feel like there's this voice telling me that I need to expand and explore. I'm more than who I am. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of uh, I think that's definitely the point. I remember when I was, I think, 12 or 13, there are several like really pivotal points in my life. One is I was my family was preparing to immigrate to Canada at the time. So so I was like in China. I also lived in Japan before that, and then it was just like a lot of traveling and changing of the environment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then one one of the things was when I was convinced when I was a kid, because I had the skin condition that resembles skills. I kind of, instead of thinking myself as a fish or snake, I thought myself as a dragon. So
That's
I,
so
I
cool.
so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm actually descending a dragon. I must actually had a part of God in me that people just didn't know about. And maybe, and then like when I'm like 30 years, like for example, when I was 9, I thought when I was 12, something amazing will happen, and then I will be known to people that I'm this like special person and whatever. So, but I feel like when I'm 12 or 13, nothing really happened or changed. That's when I feel like, okay, time to change myself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the motivation is, like I want to be a different person now because I want to evolve to the person I dreamed of when I was
Mm-hmm.
9. So that was kind of like, even as that young, right? You have dreams, you have like aspirations. You feel like this is like kind of the spark. You feel like if I truly believe I can be someone, I can make something different. So that's kind of the thing. So I think I started to live just slightly more freely. Also knowing that I'm cutting ties with that environment. I'm
Right.
moving right away.
Right.
So that kind of give me a little bit like I feel like, oh, I'm more free. And then what that did to me was I was like, at the same time I was like, I was introduced when I was living in Japan, like the diversity of religion. And in China, that wasn't really the case.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you're atheist, or you cannot practice religion. There's no freedom of religion. And then so I started to speak about freedom of religion when I was 13 in China, and that of course got me into trouble. But that's kind of like where like the point of changing is like one night, like New Year, I was just like, okay, this is I feel like I heard a voice from the god or whatever kind of like higher being and telling me, okay, you know why there's no change? Because it's time for you to change yourself. And then you have the power to do so. So go live the life that you need to live. So that's kind of
That's
that kind of transition.
incredible, Joanna. That's truly incredible. I love that for you specifically, but then it's also amazing for this character that we're creating for Mil. Like I feel like
Yeah.
that moment for them too.
Yeah, so I feel that's definitely kind of the moment where actually for Mil, maybe it's actually hearing a voice. Well, you know, she was like with nature, and then suddenly it was like, okay, I hear a voice, some kind of light like guiding towards me and telling me, okay, I need to leave here, I need to go explore, I need to change, and then the tribe need to change, and I need to bring the change to the tribe. Now the having the tribe to change to their attitude towards me. So that's kind of
Oh,
probably yeah.
so good. So good. I love it. The last one that I have here is privilege. This isn't always going to be the same as traditional patriarchal privilege that exists in our real world because hopefully in the open worlds that we create,
Mm-hmm,
those terrible patriarchies don't
mm-hmm,
exist.
mm-hmm,
So is there like a privilege that Mil has,
mm-hmm.
like even if it's just as simple as Mil grew up with two parents that supported them, maybe not in the like overly expressive, like
Mm-hmm.
lovey-dovey way that other
Mm-hmm.
people do, but supported them nonetheless.
Definitely. I think male has been supported by uh, their parents and also by the tribe, right?
Hmm.
Because there is a tribe there. There is kind of a community sense of community, even though sometimes male is not included in that, but there is one. So male understands the community aspect of science, understand what a loving, helping each other out means.
I think Mil would be such a cool character to play, to have in a party with me, or to play as like if I was a DM for a character that like I think this is such a cool character that has so much room for growth and story arcs. I think it would be. I think it's incredible. I have one more question about Mil and the world around Mil.
Mhm,
If we could adjust an element of traditional fantasy worlds
mhm.
to make a more open, accessible place for Mil specifically. So, like, what could we change about like the standard fantasy world
Mhm.
to make Mil feel more at home?
Yeah. So let's maybe start with the gender fluid concept. So I read this fantasy series called the culture, like around the culture, which is a culture that kind of like high advance from like our current society kind of way. And then in one of the things they have is they can basically input some kind of like either drugs or input things to themselves, hormones to themselves, and change gender as they wish.
Okay.
So basically, everyone in the culture, basically in this culture, half being a woman, half being a man, whenever you want, basically.
Okay.
And yeah, and I feel that's an interesting fantasy setting where it's no longer a question like we talked about. Sex is no longer important.
Mm-hmm.
It's not important. It's who you want to be. If you
Right.
feel like you being a mother for too long, you're tired of being a woman, change perspective. Let's try being a father, being a man for a little while. And then let's change perspective back to being something else.
Well, and I love that because they also the people who choose like male right off the bat and they
Mhm.
love it, they can stay male their whole life. They don't have to change if they don't want to.
Exactly. So it's kind of like all nobody questions like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like, are you a it doesn't matter, does gender matter anymore? It doesn't matter anymore. It's like whoever you want to be, whenever you want to be it. Like it's in your lifetime. If you feel you're comfortable with being a male, then like be a male the whole entire time. But
Right.
if you feel like you want to change perspective, even just for a few years, be a female, then change it and change it back if you didn't like it. It's like whatever you feel like, right?
Yeah.
So I like that idea of like fluency, just like you can be whoever you want. It doesn't matter. It's a society. Nobody sees you differently because you want to try something. It's kind of like you're like, I'm trying like different food, right? I'm trying
Hmm.
Mexican today. I'm trying Japanese food tomorrow. I'm trying Italian the next day. Who cares?
Yeah, or
So
like dyeing your hair a different color. It's like just because
yeah,
you dye your hair a
exactly.
different color, you're not going to change how you treat somebody who has green hair.
Yeah, I'm still who I am,
Yeah.
and I'm still the same person with the same values, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I see in terms of that. It's like it should be free to choose who you want to be.
That I love that, and I think that fully answers that question to a T. That's I I love both the character and the world that we are creating. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so I think that's probably a good place to uh, finish off with Mill for now. As always, everyone listening, you can find a character sheet and a visual representation of what we think Mill may look like at openworldrpg.org/podcast. Also, there you can find any links to additional resources that we may have used to make this character, or you can find a preview of all that information on our social media by searching Open World RPG and looking for the D20. Joanna, thank you so much for being here today and helping me build a more open world. Can you tell
Thank
us
you.
a bit
Yeah.
more about where the listeners can find you online, what you are up to specifically, and just plug anything you want right now for a little bit?
Awesome. Like I said, I evolve all my life around D&D related things. So you can always find me on Instagram, either at dnd.research or at cartographer without the E. So dot underscore AR. That's
I'll put
basically,
the
yeah.
links in the bio too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And you can also find my jewelry stuff at Ribbon and Knot on Instagram as well. So yeah, so I'm there. I'm mostly excited about building this augmented reality app where you can just drag and drop anything like a castle, a tree, anything you want into your physical table, but virtually. I think it's just like
That's
the kind of
really cool.
hologram kind of idea is what I'm really excited about. It's kind of, I think it's a step towards the future. Maybe it's not the future, but it's like a step towards the future for sure. So we're launching a Kickstarter at the end of this month, and definitely check it out.
Yeah, amazing. I will definitely link to all those things, both on the website and on the social media posts. Um, that's amazing. Again, I can't thank you enough for doing this with me.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I never really looked so deep into my life and reflect on D&D character before. This is super fantastic, super cool. I love what you're doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week with a new guest helping me create a new character as we continue to build an open world. I love you all.